Thank you. Hello. So we are all gathered today for one reason, which is to celebrate one of the best actors of all time, John C. Reilly. I'm very honored to be here. As Jesse said, I'm Stacey, and I am a journalist based here in LA, and I write about movies and TV, and I'm so honored to be here, as I am frequently, to speak to some of my heroes. So today is no different, so let me waste no time in bringing to the stage John C. Reilly.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're already mic'd.
Am I? Oh, yeah, I just saw this and I thought.
He does that when he walks into a room. He just grabs mics that are sitting on chairs.
Hello, union members.
How does it feel to be in a room with so much love from your fellow actor?
Well, it's really nice. I can't believe you're all here. It must be an actor's event. Who else is available at 3 o'clock? Just kidding. There'll be lots of actor jokes today, I'm sure.
It's because it's a holiday. That's why they're not working.
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's my excuse.
Well, I can barely think of a time where you weren't working. You were the most prolific actors. I just, even going through your work, it was so hard to parse out, 5 projects to talk about because it's a lot. So
we have the spinning wheel we're going to...
Yes. It'll hit a year and then we'll go into one of those projects. But before that, well, I'd love to know what your life was like growing up in Chicago. What were you like as a kid?
Oh, it was a real pain in the ass. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. There's a strange boom when I talk. So many microphones, so little time. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, the southwest side. Very Irish Catholic neighborhood. My mom was Lithuanian, my dad was Irish. And I have a lot of brothers and sisters. And in fact, I had, in my neighborhood where I grew up, in a 10-block area, I had 35 first cousins. Which gives you a sense of the size of families in my neighborhood and also how many relatives lived in my neighborhood. So I would leave in the morning at like 8 o'clock in the morning, in the summertime anyway, and just disappear until 10:30 at night. And I would stop here for lunch and there for dinner, stop at grandma's house for a cup of tea.
That sounds really lovely.
I had a really, Chicago's south side is a pretty tough little place. It's gotten a lot tougher since I lived there.
Was it largely Irish Catholic back then?
Yeah,
that part of town?
Irish and Lithuanian and Polish.
Okay.
And now it's predominantly Mexican American, I think. But anyway, it was a really kind of insular little neighborhood. It was both a wonderful place to grow up and a terrible place to grow up. There wasn't a lot of arts. I didn't know anyone in the show business in any way.
What did your parents do for work?
My dad was a businessman. He had an industrial linen supply company. And my mom was like a homemaker, and then once she got bored, she started to work at a school cafeteria. So she was a lunch lady.
Hey, hooray for lunch ladies. They're very important people. And lunch men too. I don't want to leave the lunch men out of that equation as well.
So I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger. I was very mischievous. I was just easily bored, like really stir crazy, and I would always be out just wandering around, breaking bottles and breaking into places and sneaking into my school and on the weekends.
Which makes sense, right?
I know. I hated being there during the week, and yet on the weekends I'd break in and goof around. They had these things called high flyers. You're probably all too young for this, but there were these things called high flyers. They were like rope ladders that hung from the central spinning disc. And then everyone hung on to them and spun around. I'm sure it's completely a liability now.
Right.
They don't exist anymore, but one day a year they would let us go on the high flyers. Well, and me and my cousin decided we're going to fix that. So we'd go in on the weekend
It's kind of a wonder you're sitting here with us today, John.
Yeah. I've had a lot of near-death experiences, actually. That wasn't one of them, but...
Oh goodness, we have so much to cover today.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were kind of a busy kid, but maybe not necessarily channeling your energies in the best way. When did you discover the arts as a way to sort of make best use of your energy?
I made this friend when I was a kid whose aunt was we used to call it drama, the drama teacher at the park near my house. And I hit it off with him, and he said, you know, I do this drama class at the park. Why don't you come with to drama? And I was like, okay, he seemed fun. And when I got there, I remember the first, hi, Christopher. How you doing? Hey. Wow, am I going to know other people here? Wait a minute, oh, hi.
I told you we had special guests planned.
Yeah, it's like, this is your life.
And how old were you at this point?
So I was about 8 years old,
okay.
8 or 9 around then, and my friend Jim was like, yeah, come to the park. And so I remember the first things, my first teacher was this guy named Jim Morley, who taught us all like improv games when I was like 9 years old, which now when I think about how much improvisation has been such an important part of my life, it's amazing that that's how I started off. The first play I ever did was a collection of improv sketches that we came up with through our improv classes called Comedy Tonight. And it was basically just a bunch of our sketches interspersed with songs, famous songs like Comedy Tonight. And yeah, so I remember going to that first class, and the first thing the teacher did was like, okay, all right, everybody, lay on the floor. Now, everyone pretend you're a piece of uncooked bacon, all right? You're in the pan's cold now. I'm gonna turn up the heat. What happens when bacon starts cooking? And I looked around like, are we all really gonna do this? We're all gonna pretend there were pieces of bacon? I found my people, in other words. Really, it was one of those rare moments in life where you're like, these are my people. Like, I get it now. This is where I should be going every day instead of breaking bottles and breaking into the school. Like, I should be coming here and goofing around with these people. And from then on, that was it. From pretty much from that day.
Wow.
It's not that I ever dreamed of working as an actor. It was just something I suddenly realized I loved to do this, and it already seemed to fit my whole skill set already. So then I think the next show we did was the Christmas Carol. Anyway, I could go through my entire repertoire if you want, all the plays I did when I was a kid.
And were your parents supportive of this activity? Were they?
My parents were just happy that I wasn't getting arrested. You know, like there was a lot. I don't know. In my neighborhood, like it was both like terrifying and tough, and then really boring. So we like throw rocks at the police cars as they went by to just get them to chase us. And then when anything bad would happen in the neighborhood, the police would come to my house first, because my older brothers were kind of like the de facto leaders of this giant tribe of crazy young guys. But anyway, yeah, enough about that.
You've really set the stage. That really helps a lot. Did you have any heroes when you were a kid, whether they were actors or not, but people you looked up to and you thought, okay, if I could have a career like that person, if I could dedicate my life to doing it.
I didn't even know the word career meant then. Really, I remember going to movies and watching people like Gene Hackman and thinking, well, that's just who he is. I didn't know anyone who was an actor. I didn't understand how movies were made. And so when I went to look at movies, it just seemed like, oh, he must really be like that. Like,
they're just people who strolled in onto the screen. They didn't.
Yeah, I didn't make the connection that it's a thing that people do and they pretend, and then like it was years and years before I figured out like, oh, you could have that as a job. And all along that way, I kept thinking, well, I'll just keep doing this until someone tells me I can't do it anymore, or my parents kept saying, you got to get a job. What are you gonna? You're gonna get a job. I mean, when I was 10 years old, they're saying this, like, you gotta get a job. And my first job I did get when I was 12 years old, I started washing dishes, like, totally illegally at this Lithuanian restaurant in my neighborhood. And they used to save the dishes all day long from, like, breakfast and lunch. I'd get there after school and it'd be like a Popeye cartoon of just, like, dishes. Everyone just, oh, God. And by the end of the night, I would have finished all of it. But, yeah, anyway, so yeah, so my parents would always say, like, get a job, what's your plan B, that kind of thing. But that said, I never thought I would be an actor. I had a friend who was like this. I had a friend who was like, I'm going to be the world's greatest actor. He even had a denim jacket with a hand-painted world's greatest actor.
No, he did.
Yeah, he did. And I remember thinking like, wow, he's really confident. How can you possibly tell? Like, what does life hold for us? How can you tell?
And what happened to that guy?
He became a manager, I think.
Okay.
Here in Hollywood. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a very long time.
He's actor adjacent, at least.
Yeah. So anyway, so I just kept going along thinking like, well, I'll just keep doing this. And then as I got into high school and I was doing tons of musicals and that kind of thing, I just started thinking like, well, what could I do with these skills that I've been building? Like I could be a lawyer or a priest or I was seriously considering being a priest. And I was a clown at a certain point, but I knew there was no future in that. Turns out there was actually, not with the makeup on.
And did you decide to study it in college to make it more formal?
So I finished high school. Well, towards the end of high school, we could be here for hours and hours and hours.
We have all day.
So in high school, I was like a junior in high school, and my dad said to me, he knew I was interested in acting, but I really hadn't decided that that's what I was going to try to do. And he said, listen, if you get a B+ average, you can go to any school you want, even Juilliard.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that's that famous acting place. Oh, okay, wow, okay. And I wasn't even thinking like, I don't know, I have children of my own now, and I know what the process of going to college is like now. My parents didn't help me at all with that. They were, like, anyway, God rest their souls. I shouldn't be talking bad about my parents. But so I was doing too many plays to get a B+ average.
Right.
I was doing plays at my school and at girls' high schools and at a community theater. Basically, anywhere I heard that there was a play going on in my neighborhood, I would go and try to get in it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I blew that. I got a C average, which I thought was, I thought like, A, who wants an A? That's way too much work. For what? A letter? Who cares? Like, I don't want a D or an F, but a C, that's like, boom, hit my mark. I can go do the stuff that I want to do. And
right.
I thought of school as like a day job, It's just like, I got to just get through this crap. Like,
I really want to see a TV show about a young John C. Reilly. Like, would you guys watch that? It's like hilarious. You have to write a treatment for your life story.
I'm just trying to think who would play it.
Yes, who would play you?
It'd be a real shame that I couldn't play it anymore. I have to get a John C. Reilly type. I've slid into that part of my career. People are looking for John C. Reilly types.
And what is a John C. Reilly type, do you think?
You got me. Anyway, so I remember thinking like, so my dad said if you don't get a B+ average, then you're going to the college of my choice. And I was like, okay. And then the day of reckoning came, when the report card came. Of course, I didn't have a B+ average. And my dad said, great, you're going to DePaul University, because that's where this guy who works for me went. And it's a great business school, and you're going to take over my business when I retire. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, well, wow, I should have got that B+ average, I guess. And so I went to DePaul for a tour, and while I was there, I discovered that the Goodman School of Drama had a conservatory of acting. Yeah, it's called the Theater School at DePaul University now, but they had a conservatory of acting that was on par with like Juilliard. And so I was like, cool, DePaul. Yeah, I'll go to DePaul. And I just kind of like got all the information I had. Then I had to audition for that program, and I got in, and then I was doing theater from like 7:30 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night in one way or another, theater history and dance and all this different stuff. And then and I purposely put, my dad and I had the same name, but we had different middle initials. And so when I signed up at the school, I purposely just put John Reilly. I didn't put any middle initial. So that when the mail came to the house, I could say, well, this is probably for me. You know, like, so my grades for 3 years would come, and I'd be like, John Reilly, that's me, right? You know, like, and I was doing great. Believe me, I got better than a B+ average in acting school. And then around my 3rd year of acting school, I was living with my parents separated at that point. I was living with my dad in an apartment near the school, and I came into the house, and he was standing in front of the TV, like looking through his mail, and I see him opening this DePaul letter. I was like, and he goes, he's got his back to me, and here, like, my dad was very kind of patrician, like tough, like, you know, no nonsense kind of guy. And he was like, his 2 heroes were Humphrey Bogart and W.C. Fields. And so he's going, I'm looking at your report card here, and I'm looking for the business classes. I see theater history, movement, stage combat, acting. I don't see any business classes on here. And before I believed that I would do this, in order to get out of that situation with my dad, I said, Dad, I'm going to be an actor. I want to be an actor. But inside my head, I was like, I don't know. I'm just trying to not get in trouble here. Like, right. I'm going to be an actor, Dad. Like, and he's like, fine. At least you got a good grade point average. You know, like, there was one other time like that too. I remember. Do you remember those times when you're sort of forced to make a choice about your life, and you just go, oh, it's this thing, but you don't really believe it yet? I was trying to get out of chemistry class in high school because I was failing miserably. I was literally falling asleep over and over. I just could not stay asleep in chemistry class. And so the dean of students came to see me, who was also the dean of discipline at my boys' Catholic high school. There is such a thing, dean of discipline. So he comes and pulls me out of chemistry class. He's like, listen, jackass, what is this? You can't just leave this class, and what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to transfer to business law. I'm going to be an actor. I want to be an actor. Again, I didn't really believe it, and he's like, fine. I just wanted to get out of chemistry, but eventually, what happened was, when I around that same time, when I had about a year left to go at DePaul, my friend Kevin J. O'Connor, who is a great actor, who was in There Will Be Blood and a ton of things. He played the false brother in There Will Be Blood.
Oh, yeah.
He's from the south side of Chicago, just like me. He went to a different boys' Catholic high school, but I knew him well, and we did plays together at girls' high schools, so I knew Kevin very well. And we both went to DePaul. Kevin graduated the year before me and got cast in Francis Ford Coppola's movie Peggy Sue Got Married.
Wow.
And it was like, this light just went off in my head, like, wait a second, I know that guy. He's from my neighborhood. Like, his dad was a cop. Like, wait a second. I'm going to try to do that for a living too. And it wasn't until my last year of college where I really said to myself, I'm going to try to be an actor.
Wow. And you believed you could do it at that point?
Well, I saw Kevin. I mean, it was like, I worship Kevin, really. Kevin is one of the best actors I've ever met.
Right, but to see someone who is a part of your life move on to this, from this realm to another realm.
It was just important. I come from this really kind of concrete background, a real working class, like, get a job kind of. And when I saw that Kevin could do it, that he did it, I suddenly had a reference point that I didn't have until then.
Right.
Even though I was already in 3 years of an acting program, all of them talking about but it just wasn't sinking in. I was like, yeah, I'm just doing this so I don't have to take over my dad's business. Like, anyway, what's the next question?
I'm just letting you do your thing. We're just witness to your genius. So I'd love to start with your first ever film appearance, which was Casualties of War, in 1989. Brian De Palma directing, pretty great debut. Sean Penn and Michael J. Fox, of course. So tell me how you got that role. Did you audition locally? How did De Palma find you?
I was still in Chicago, and I kind of didn't quite have an agent, but there were these agencies that would let you, if there was a big job coming up and they knew that you were okay, they would let you come in and tape. Okay. And so this movie, all the actors of my age were trying to get in. It still is kind of a rite of passage for male actors anyway, to get in war movies, like how a lot of unknown people get started.
Well, it's also large casts. And,
large casts,
ensemble,
like a certain age group, like,
right.
And so I thought, like, well, here's this is a chance to get in a movie, and so I made a really smart choice, which is that normally you'd go in, you guys all know, it's like go in and you sit and read with your agent or you read with a casting person or whatever, and it sucks and and you just don't have nothing to play off of. And I had a few auditions like that before this, and I realized I don't do my best work like that. So I got a friend of mine. I said, listen, you read for me, you be off camera for me, and I'll be off camera for you, and we'll practice at home together, and then we'll go into that office, that weird corporate office with a video camera where we always get all nervous, and we'll be prepared and comfortable already. Right. And so we went in and did that, and I got cast off of that videotape by Lynn Stallmaster, a casting director out here.
That's amazing.
And I was cast I had a day player part. And it was just this guy is supposed to get his arm blown off in the middle of a battle at the beginning of that movie, and then that's it. He gets carted away. It's just this kind of intense, dramatic moment. But that was it, literally one scene. And I went over there. Every story I tell takes 20 minutes. I went over there, and so I had never been out of the Midwest. I'd never been in an airplane. I'd never left America. I'd never been in a movie. And all of a sudden, I was like on an airplane flying to Thailand, and I got there, and it was just surreal, you know. First of all, the humidity was so intense there. When I got off the plane, they handed me a custom form, and I was like, why are you giving me this soggy piece of, what is this? It's a form. Like, it was like that wet. So I got involved there with the rehearsal process and stuff, and I was coming out of doing nothing but theater in Chicago, so I just thought, like, you go in, just do the best you can, do whatever anyone asks you to, and just cross into the looking glass, like, suspend your disbelief. And so we were doing these weird rehearsals in this big kind of ballroom at this fancy hotel, and in Phuket, and I remember they'd be like, they'd be reading through these scenes and going through it, and they'd be like, we don't have this, the troupe is talking to this 80-year-old Vietnamese guy here, we don't have that guy, who here, you do it. And I'm like, yeah, great, me. Yeah, like, pretending to speak Vietnamese and like, just completely going for it, and whatever it was, whatever little thing that they asked me to do. Then I got kind of a reputation during rehearsals as kind of funny and willing to jump in and do whatever. A lot of the other actors on that movie were really like trying to out-tough Sean Penn, And I was like, aren't we putting on a show? Like, why are you trying to out-tough Sean Penn? He's way tougher than all of us. Like.
And what do you remember about Michael J. Fox? Because that was a huge departure for him. He had obviously done Teen Wolf and Back to the Future. Sean was a
tough guy. Sean was very tough on Michael in that movie. Because, but for he had good intentions, but I don't think Michael appreciated it. But anyway, so what happened was a couple of those people who were trying to out-tough Sean Penn got fired. First one of them got fired, and then I got bumped up to a cameo part. Wow. So this guy got fired. This guy moved up to his leading role, and I moved up to that guy's cameo, right? And then I started rehearsing that. And so, then I got sent back home because now this cameo doesn't film until later in the schedule. And they're like, go back home. So I go back. On the way home, I stop in LA because I was kind of getting sweet on this girl who I ended up marrying. Who was Sean Penn's assistant at the time. Wow. Who I met there in Thailand. And I know, it's crazy, right? I'm still married to her. That's even crazier.
That's amazing.
26 years, that's like 100 in Hollywood. So then I went back home, or I started to go back home. I stopped in LA, fell deeply in love with this girl, Allison Dickey, and then I was sleeping, and I had this dream, and I swear to God, you're going to think I'm making this up, but I swear to God, this is true. In the dream, I was having this dream, and in the dream, the phone rang, and then someone said, John, it's your agent. And in the dream, I answered the phone call, and they said, you have to go back to Thailand. You're cast in a different part. And then I woke up from that dream, from Allison waking me saying, John, there's a phone call for you. I got up, I got on the phone, it's my agent from Chicago, you have to go back to Thailand, you've been cast in another role. Now I missed the quick flight from LA back over to Thailand, so I had to fly from LA to Miami, to to New Delhi, to Hong Kong, I globe-trotted all the way back there. And I got into the car, and the producer of that movie, Art Linton, was like, how you doing, kid? I was like, I'm good. What part am I playing? But I still didn't know. They wouldn't tell me. They were like, just get him here. And so Art Linton goes, you're the new Hatcher, which is like the fourth lead of the movie.
Wow.
Which is the part I played. And then I was like, where are we going? And he's like, don't worry. We're just going to the set. We're going to get your hair cut and get you in your uniform. Get your costume figured out. And I was like, okay. So I got there, they cut my hair, they put me in this uniform, and Brian De Palma got one look at him, he's like, great, let's do something right now. Okay.
See,
what is happening to me
all
right now?
All those improv classes, though. Had you not taken
movie,
all those improv classes and done all of that work, you would not have been ready.
Well, the first thing, if you see the movie, it's a tough movie to watch. It's about a rape, basically.
It's terrible,
metaphorically and literally. But the first scene was I was sleeping in this rice paddy, and then we're ambushed. And I have to wake up, and my gun jams, and I can't get it to fire fast enough to save my friend, who ends up getting killed. And so my first scene in the movie was asleep. Yeah, and then so okay, that's the story of that movie. There's more chapters to it, but
okay, I think we've determined you need to write a book, John.
I guess so.
You really should.
I asked my accountant. I was like, how can I get a revenue stream going that requires no work and I don't have to give commissions to anyone? And then he's like, write a book.
And you're like, that takes a lot of work.
Write a book. Although I bet someone's commissioning that.
As we speak. So I think we've realized we have to skip over a bunch of years because we're never going to get through this.
Too much.
No, we love it, but
just open it up to questions.
No, but I'm going to just mention a few of the movies that followed that experience. Days of Thunder, life-changing for me. What's Eating Gilbert Grape, The River Wild, Dolores Claiborne. I mean, really, it seemed at one point that you were in every movie that was coming out in the 90s.
I've done about 2 a year since that movie.
You have.
Yeah.
It's been very impressive. So I'd love to talk about your collaborations with Paul Thomas Anderson, Boogie Nights, 1998.
Sure. That's a big fast forward. That's 13 films forward. Paul's first movie was my 13th film.
And Hard 8 was your first collaboration with Paul before Boogie Nights. And with Gwyneth Paltrow, correct?
Right, that was
that
was
Paul's
first movie, Hard 8. Mm-hmm.
So the character of Reed Rothschild, so special in so many ways. I think about the booth scene with Mark Wahlberg when you're singing. I mean, there are some of these things that stick in my head that is like
all
most
improv.
Well, that's what I wanted to find out. But did he write the character of Reed for you specifically?
Yeah, so Paul and I we had made Hard 8 together, which was put together at the Sundance Filmmakers Workshop. So if you ever get asked to go in the summertime up to Sundance, go.
It's a good opportunity.
There's amazing younger people coming up there to work on scripts that they've written, and they kind of teach them how to shoot a movie if they haven't done it before. That's where I met Paul, and that's where we became really very close friends from that. I lost my father during the course of that movie,
wow.
And or during the course of that summer, actually, before we made that movie. But so anyway, it was an intense time. We bonded, and we were trying to, then Paul had this other movie that he'd written, Boogie Nights, but no one wanted to do it because of porn.
Oh, God.
Can you imagine that now? Like,
no.
Porn is everywhere. It's practically on billboards.
Yeah, it was kind of salacious at the time.
But no one, even, I remember at the SAG Awards, that movie was nominated for Best Ensemble, and I've never felt like dirtier. Those are the people from the porn movie, right? Sitting with Julianne Moore and Bill Macy, like feeling like the kids at the wedding or something. But I think that movie really, I mean, to me, one of the best movies of the 90s, but really of all time. But I did a lot of improvisation on that movie.
You did,
this is something I keep returning to because I think it's really important for actors to recognize that that's a really, really good skill to have, and you shouldn't be ashamed to try to do it if people encourage you to do it. And that improv is writing. It is writing. You know, and if there's one thing I want to do before I die, I would like to get the business to recognize the fact that when actors improvise, that's them writing dialogue for your movie. You know, like that's a real thing.
So obviously,
not to fault Paul Anderson or whatever, but there are filmmakers like Mike Leigh. It's like a Mike Leigh film written and directed by Mike Leigh. Like, I've talked to some of those actors, and they improvised that whole script for you during the rehearsal process. So how can you say you wrote it? But anyway,
that's. But so obviously Paul is very welcoming of that, and that's one of the reasons you enjoyed. And then you go on
Paul
to
was just like on fire. Paul's one of the best people to work for.
What is so unique about him in terms of the interactions he has with actors on the set? Does he really just let you? He casts perfectly, clearly, and he just kind of like let you do your thing.
Yeah, Paul pays attention. You know, like I'm sure you guys have been on sets where you're like, is anyone watching what we're doing? I know there's all this other stuff we have to worry about. Is anyone watching what we're doing? And that's what I always say to directors, like, you know, like, how do you like to work? Like, just pay attention to what I'm doing. You're like,
wow.
It's taken us so long to get to this moment, this sacred moment between action and cut. We should all be focused on what's happening with the acting at that moment, shouldn't we? So Paul is like hyper focused on what's going on with the acting. He's like all sweaty and like wide-eyed next to the camera, like. And then he'll run in, you know, after a take and be like, it was cool, I saw you took a pause there. And he's like, wow, he really did notice every single thing that I did. And he noticed what was different from the last take, etc. And he'll give little encouragement or hints, well, maybe go try this or that. So you really feel like you have a collaborator behind the camera. And that's really important, you know. And the audience is pretty important.
But you can tell watching his movies. I mean, now that you say that, the reason his movies stick with me is I remember every performance. I remember Jason Robards and Magnolia. It's just so stunning.
Just to sing Paul's praises for a second. Paul, I don't know if you guys saw Phantom Thread.
Yes, amazing.
But what you might not know is that Paul was the director of photography for that movie. Paul directed that movie, he wrote it, but he was also the camera operator for that movie.
Wow.
So try directing Daniel Day-Lewis just for a day. And then try to operate a camera while you're doing it. That was a real tour de force, what he did. So
he deserved an Oscar just for that experience. Yeah. So 2002 was a giant year for you. Chicago and Gangs of New York in the same year. Two of the, I'd say, largest scale productions, and for very different reasons. Tell me what it was like to work with Scorsese, and I know that production took forever, and then to work with Rob Marshall. What did they have in common that you took away with?
What did Rob Marshall and Martin Scorsese have in common?
I don't know if they have anything in common.
They're two very different people.
But they both seem very ambitious, at the very least.
Well, that year, 2002, I got a lot of attention because I was in 3 of the 5 Best Picture nominees that year.
I remember that, yeah.
Which is a feat, you know. If you, I don't know how I did it, but the truth is that I made those movies over a longer period of time, but because 9/11 happened, the distribution schedule got bumped, and all of a sudden all of them came out. I had 4 movies come out that year, not only the 3 I was nominated for, but The Good Girl also that year.
Oh, The Good Girl,
and,
the best.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like I had done all this stuff in a year, but in fact it was a longer period of time. But anyway, gosh, you know, directors are just like human beings. They're each very unique and very different. Rob had Rob came up as a dancer and a choreographer in the musical theater, which that's how I learned how to be an actor. You know, like I did those improv classes and stuff when I was a kid, but in terms of plays, we weren't doing Ibsen on the south side of Chicago, you know, or Shakespeare for that matter. We were doing Hello, Dolly, Brigadoon, The Bells Are Ringing, The King and I, Fiddler on the Roof. I could go on and on. Jesus Christ Superstar. I was in all those. So Rob, I suddenly realized, like when I went to acting school, I got this idea in my head because musicals were such a big part of my past as a child. I thought, well, that's what like silly actors do. They do musicals, and comedy, and like I'm a serious actor. I'm going to be a dramatic actor. You know, like I'm in this conservatory of acting, and that's all bullshit. And it wasn't until I got that movie when I realized, like, no, it's not bullshit. It's a really special thing to be able to do all these things that a musical requires. And musical theater is like, other than jazz, and baseball maybe, it's the one thing we invented.
It's true.
You know, it's an American art form. Like, if you've ever seen a musical on stage in London, you'll know what an American art form it is. So working with Rob was like a come to Jesus moment for me when I realized, oh my God, like this is who I am, and this is a noble pursuit, and this is art, you know.
And how did it feel to sing in film?
It felt great.
And you got an Oscar nomination for Chicago.
Yeah,
Which was very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember that your character was very Amos, of course, Amos Hart, and Mr. Cellophane. That felt to me like a very vulnerable sequence.
Yeah,
but just like everything felt very vulnerable about your performance in that movie. Did it feel that way to you too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's a real Amos Hart. You know, he's all heart. And so he believes when people tell him things. He just believes right away. He's very gullible and very vulnerable. So, and Rob was being told, cast this very famous comedian or this very famous comedian or this famous Broadway musical star. And he was like, no, I want it to seem like the guy's really is a mechanic in the 1920s, like, and John seems like a mechanic in the 1920s, and I believe him, like, acting-wise. Like, it can't be so camp that it doesn't seem real. It's a very important emotional part of the movie, that relationship between Amos and Roxy. So anyway, yeah, that was, it was another one of those moments in life where you're like, when you have the clarity of mind to go like, this is an important moment in my life. Literally, while I was performing on this little pretend theater we're in up in Toronto, I could tell, like, oh my God, the life is coming full circle, and it was just a very,
and the movie's called Chicago
experience. Yeah, it wasn't shot in Chicago. Can you believe it was shot in Toronto?
I remember that.
And the great film plague of the 80s of having to go to Canada all the time.
But it was all sound. I mean, you didn't use a lot of real exteriors.
It wasn't in the 80s or the 90s, wasn't it? But,
yeah.
Or maybe, anyway. So I have a little cold, so the whole thing sounds like I'm talking with earmuffs on. But but Martin Scorsese, I mean, I could still try to compare the two. There really is no comparing the two. But
well, how long, and obviously production was delayed. How long were you actively shooting or on set for that movie?
Which?
For Gangs.
We shot that one in Italy.
Right.
That was shot outside of Rome in the old Roman film studio Cinecittà. For I don't know for what reason, I'm not sure. Other than maybe New York doesn't look like it.
Well, they built it from scratch. They built the whole thing from scratch.
Yeah,
right? Okay.
Yeah, including a harbor and this whole crazy
extraordinary.
thing. I think there was a good exchange rate. That was one of the main reasons that the Weinsteins wanted to shoot there. But anyway, yeah, working with Martin Scorsese, I did a couple of things with him. I did The Aviator after that film, and working with him was like working with a genius oil painter or something. Like a great painter knows, like, well, if I put a dab of red here, it will make people feel this just by the choice of this color red. Wow. I'll evoke a response. That deliberate. When Scorsese directs a film, he has such a mastery of film language, because not only his films and all the work that he's done, but the films that he's watched. He spent his whole life, still to this day, watching films, studying them, and so everything he did was like, he's similar to Paul in that he's very enthusiastic about actors. He's kind of like, he doesn't quite understand how it all works. How are they doing this?
He seems mystified by it.
Keep going. Yeah, he does seem mystified, but he's not mystified at all by film and camera and composition and that kind of thing. Like, so I felt like really in good hands, and I felt like someone who really appreciated what I was doing.
Well, it's kind of funny too. Per your recollections about your childhood, you were playing a cop on the streets of New York. So you had grown up. You were playing a a law enforcement person and not the rapscallion running around.
Have I grown up? I honestly, I still feel like I'm that kid pretending to be a piece of bacon. Really, I mean, don't you feel that way? Like, isn't it a wonderful thing as we get older that our eyesight gets poorer? Because as we look in the mirror, we can't quite tell how we're aging. We're like, oh, it's you again, same old you. You know, I still feel like I still look at the world through the same lens of that childhood self. You know, really.
But I think you bring that to your work too. I think there's something so special.
I think all actors do. You have to keep some kind of that make-believe stuff.
But there are a lot of actors who act with a capital A who really are trying to come across as so almost like too austere, or there's something very
humorless. I think is the word you're looking for.
Exactly. Yes. No, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I think I can't tell you how many funerals I've gone to where you end up just cackling with laughter at some story or some beautiful day in a park when you remember your dead mother or something. It's like life is not one way or the other. Life is comedy and tragedy all the time. Every 2 seconds it flips back and forth. So the most engaging performances I see are the ones that tell the truth about that are honest about the fact that there's light and shadow all the time.
Yeah. I agree. And speaking of comedy, I have to ask you about your collaborations with Tim and Eric.
Oh.
And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have a lot of stuff to look up on YouTube after this afternoon. Dr. Steve Brule. I remember, around 2007, a friend of mine sent me this clip of the wine tasting episode, and by my estimation, still one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life.
I will tell him you said so.
No, truly. And I met those guys; they're great. I really enjoyed speaking to them.
I'll tell Steve Brule you said so.
Oh yeah, sorry, Steve Brule.
I'm an executive producer on that show.
Yes, you are. Well, tell me about how you met them, and also, your collaborations with them. One is more absurd and more ridiculous than the next. But it's quite beautiful what you have created together, and I almost feel like not really terribly as appreciated as it should be. I mean, I really do feel like what you have made is some of the funniest stuff of the last 10 years.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, I'm very serious.
I don't like to speak for Steve. I know it sounds weird and pretentious, but of all the things I've been involved with, I think it's best that Steve just arrives as himself, and that I take credit as an executive producer of that show, and that that we don't tell you what's in the cookies.
So you want to maintain some mystery?
Well, yeah, I think it's better, don't you? I mean, you don't want to know how, anyway.
All right. Well, you've made a lot of comedies. What is your favorite comedy?
We should have talked about that before.
No, that's okay. That's okay. What is one of your favorite comedies that you've worked on? It's okay. Hey, I'm free and easy. I'm here to illuminate you. This is not about me, John. What is one of your favorite comedies that you've worked on? Features.
Well, Will Ferrell and I had a great time together.
You've done some stuff, yeah? And you have a new movie coming out, Holmes and Watson, next month.
Yeah, on Christmas Day.
Christmas Day.
I just saw Will last night at the People's Choice Awards.
Did you win anything?
No, I gave someone something.
What is special about working with Will? He's a very, in my estimation, a good guy. He's a solid good guy, very smart. But there's something magical that happens when the two of you are together. And what is it that's so special about him?
He's good at improvising. He's someone who will commit to an idea and just chase it all the way down. Like, he's even more committed than me, I think, to ideas. Like Will, I heard this story one time. Will came up with this weird, he was goofing around backstage, and he put on this weird sweater and this hat and these clothes, and just to make someone laugh. And then basically, the cut to the chase, he wore those same clothes for 6 months every single day. Because people kept saying, like, come on, Will, let it go, let it go. And he would wear those clothes every single day for 6 months. For a whole season of SNL, he, backstage, was wearing this weird outfit.
Wow. That's commitment.
He's a lot of fun. He's a lot of comedians have this sort of darkness, or a lot of stand-up comedians anyway, that I've met have this sort of this compulsive need for affirmation, and the jokes are a way to fill a hole inside them. And Will is not like that at all.
Yeah.
Will is just a really mischievous, funny guy he's very smart, he's very subversive, and he loves to play. Yeah.
Well, that comes across. So
Yeah.
Thank you for
like
for all
a
your
real
work.
family guy too. You
Yes.
know, it's just like very people. I always, when we're in public and I see people meet Will, I just watch him just be disappointed over and over again because he's just so normal. You know,
He is very normal.
he's just like, oh, nice to meet you. Like, ah! Like, I was just saying nice to meet you. Like, yeah.
Well, I think the two of you both have that air of mischief factor. I think your faces are fun to look at. They're fun faces. No, they are. They're fun.
That's
But
what
you
my
look-
first girlfriend said.
Well, you guys know what I mean.
Fun to
They
look
look
at,
like they're happy people who are having fun, and that is not always the
I know
case.
what you mean.
Yeah.
No, and I think the secret to comedy, is wait for it, is that feeling of like when you're working and you're about to laugh, but there's no physical sign yet that you're about to laugh, but you feel like carbonation rising up inside you, like you're about to lose it. That's the sweet spot. That's where you want to be. Like a lot of the best stuff in Step Brothers and Talladega Nights are those moments where if you were to look at the take a little bit further beyond where it was cut, we'd be howling with laughter and falling apart. But you know, just a moment before is what's in the movie.
She's okay, you guys. She's okay. She's just having fun. So I'd love to jump ahead because you have 3 movies this year, all of which are worth mentioning.
4 movies this year.
Oh, what's the 4th? I have Sisters, Brothers, Ralph, Stan and Ollie. What's the 4th one?
And Holmes and Watson.
Oh, Holmes and Watson.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're right. So much going
These
on.
were all made one after the other. Unlike 2002, these movies, I was in Europe for 11 months. I made 3 of them back to back.
Oh my gosh.
And Wreck-It Ralph throughout, you know, over a period of a couple of years.
Wow. Well, and I definitely want to talk about the voice acting piece of it, but let's do Sisters Brothers first. Have you seen this movie? Have you guys? It's really amazing. Really a very fine performance on your part. And you, speaking of shooting in a weird place, you shot in Europe. This was in Spain and not, I'm from Oregon, and I was like, that's not Oregon. I can tell. Those rock structures do not look like Oregon, but it was still so beautiful, and the world that your director created was very convincing.
Well, we didn't just stay in Oregon.
No, I know.
We went down to California.
You did. But tell me what it was like to work with Joaquin, first of all.
Yeah, so The Sisters Brothers is based on a book called The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt, and my wife and I produced it, and we bought the rights to it 7 years ago because as I got older, I started to think like, well, I'm either, you know, people are going to just suddenly realize, you know, he should be doing more and be giving me these big offers, or I'm going to have to start to find stuff on my own and develop it. And the older I got, I thought like, well, the first option's probably not going to start happening. Studios are not going to suddenly start giving me lead roles. And so, yeah, so my wife read that book and thought it was amazing, and we approached Jacques Audiard, the great French filmmaker, to make it. And yeah, Joaquin and I play brothers in it, and Eli and Charlie's sisters is our name. And well, what do you want to know?
Well, just I'd love to know that, because you have a great on-screen dynamic. But how is your process different from his? Because he has a very unique approach to his art. Very obviously.
I would
so
say about
talented.
Joaquin. I mean, Joaquin to me is peerless, myself included. I don't know anyone who does what he does on camera. When he's on, you know, it's like that's pretty hard to do. And what I mean is, you know, if you think about how deliberate the filmmaking process is, from the writing of the script to the, you know, setting up the shot and the lights and the camera, the marks and the thing, and the action. Now, be unpredictable. You know, it's like,
Right.
That's very, very hard to be unpredictable when you know the game. You know, and somehow Joaquin, when you're watching him on camera, it's like watching a raccoon in the garbage cans. You're like, what is he gonna do now? Oh my God, he's going on top of the fence! Like,
That's a great explanation, actually.
so I'm an actor who can go with that for sure. I can be very adaptable and kind of like improvise, or you know, but I'm also a little bit of a circus clown too. You know, like or a vaudevillian or something. You know, like I also like, all right, what's the deal? What are we gonna do here? You know, what's the gag? You know, whatever. So I kind of toggle back and forth between those two kind of ways of working, where one is a deliberate performative kind of attitude, and the other is just like, I have no idea what's going to happen next. You know, Joaquin lives in the place of I have no idea what's going to happen next. So.
What was the hardest part of making that film? Because it was physically very strenuous.
Yeah, the horse riding was dangerous and intense, and really the hardest part was showing up and being as truthful as Joaquin every day.
Right.
It was really, and also Jacques Audiard has a very sensitive bullshit detector. So if you tried to pull off anything artificial, he'd be like, you know, what are you doing? Yeah, don't do that. All right. I know. All right. I'm sorry. Yeah, the process of that movie was a process of becoming a brother to Joaquin.
Did you have time to bond off camera or beforehand?
Well, we worked together. I knew him just very briefly socially a couple times, and we had Paul Thomas Anderson in common, of course, before we worked together. But we had about 3 weeks to ride horses and shoot guns and do all this stuff together, and I realized right away, you know, I'm like, so Joaquin, what do you? So Joaquin, like I was like, okay, you don't like to talk, all right. You know what I mean? He's someone who's like, we don't have to talk about stuff. I know who you are. You know, like let's just be alive in this moment together. You know.
Wow.
Which is like, oh, right, I know that's true, but
well, that's rare.
Just
that's
reminding me of it, you know, like, and so then I realized like I'm not going to get to know this guy by asking him questions, and so I realized I'm just going to have to spend time together, because Eli and Charlie, from the time they killed their father when they were little boys, have spent every morning, every evening, every meal, every sunset, every sunrise, every trail ride together, side by side. And that you get really intimate when you spend that much time shoulder to shoulder with somebody. So I thought, well, I'm just going to do what Eli and Charlie did. I'm just going to be shoulder to shoulder with this guy. And whatever we do, I'm going to be there with him. And we eventually lived together during the movie. We would make dinner for each other every night.
Aww.
We'd drive to and from the set together. We would literally be shoulder to shoulder on the set every day, taking naps on boulders together out in the sun. And one bit by one bit, we became very, very, very close. And to this day, I feel like I'll love Joaquin for the rest of my life. You know?
Oh, that is so
really
sweet.
That's a beautiful thing about being an actor. It's a beautiful thing. I don't know that accountants can say the same thing. You know, that we have these moments, these 5-month periods or whatever it is, the run of a play, the run of a show, where you get so much closer to someone than you might even in your own family or something. You know, because you know it's just 6 months. So I'll reveal my whole heart to this person, you know. It's a special thing. And the bonds that you make with people, you all know, I assume everyone here is an actor, are you?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what it's like, those bonds, you never ever forget when you get close to somebody like that. Even when the job ends and you know, like, well, it might be 8 days or it miite be 8 years before I see that person again, but you let them into your heart in a way that's different than being an accountant or something.
Not that accountants don't share their hearts with each other too. Yeah. I don't know any personally, but so I would.
I've got a great one.
Okay. Well, I guess I have one guy. So I'd love to talk about how you mentioned Ralph and how you were working on it throughout. So when you're voice acting, is it that you're in the booth by yourself and you're doing this part on this day, and a couple months later you're doing the next part and you're sending in the files? Like, how did it work, like strategically?
Well, I had heard when I was offered that first movie, Wreck-It Ralph, not the sequel that we just did, but the first one, I asked a friend of mine, like, what's it like? Because I was like, I don't know, Disney, like, just seems like this big corporate thing, and I don't know that.
Merchandising.
I like to improvise, and I don't like people telling me what to do. I only like talking to the director, like, my few little brushes with TV and that kind of thing. I realized, like, I don't understand how this works. I see my work as a pyramid structure, like the director's on the top of the pyramid.
Right.
And
TV's
so
not
when
like
I go on, I remember doing a guesting on a TV show one time, and like 4 different writers coming up to me. Oh, don't forget you. I was like, hold on a second. Who are these people? Like, who's in charge here?
And you have a different director every episode.
Yeah, that was really weird. So it didn't suit me. And so when I met with Rich Moore, the director of that first one, I said, listen, I heard that you don't get the whole script. You're just giving your scenes. Oftentimes the other actor's not even there, and you just go in and just read these lines, and then you go home, and you're not really part of the process. And I was like, I appreciate the offer, but I that's not something I want to do. And he's like, well, we can do it however we want to do it.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, well then let's have the other actors in the studio. Great. Let's improvise. Perfect.
That's amazing.
And so he really gave me all the freedom that I asked for. And I think, I know that, you've watched movies, and when an actor is on a telephone, right? Hello, yeah. Well, I'm sitting, you can tell when there's no one on the other end of the phone. You got to be really, really good. And that's a trick that Sean Penn told me, actually. He's like, listen, if you're on the phone, get someone on the other end of the line. Even if it's not the other actor, just get someone reading those lines off so that you're actually talking to someone on the phone. Because it's the quickest little acting trick, and it's so effective. And that's the same way with the animation. I knew having that person in the room does matter. It does matter. Looking into their eyes when you say, I'm going to miss you, is different than looking to a piece of tape on the wall and saying, I'm going to miss you. Really. And it's for some reason, the technical side of filmmaking just thinks that's just actors and their soulful ways. It doesn't matter. We can't tell who's off camera. Just look at the piece of tape. But it does matter. And so those movies, that one and this one, both have, I think, a soulful quality that is missing in some animated movies that I've seen because we're there together.
Right.
Anyway.
And what is it like to hear your voice come out of a character who isn't you? Your kids must have thought that was really fun.
It is. It's a strange sort of symbiosis that happens, because at first it's really not you, and then they videotape you while you're doing the audio recording, and slowly but surely your gestures and your eyebrows and your thing, all your facial expressions start morphing into this character, to the point now when I look at those billboards that are everywhere right now, I'm like, well, there I am. kind of. But that guy's such a part of my heart. He really, through improvisation and through me, I was a real advocate for a real humanist approach to the characters behind the scenes. So I thought, well, there's enough dynamic kind of disposable kids entertainment out there. Let's say something real about people, even though we're playing video game characters. Let's say something real about people. Let's do things that kids can relate to in their own lives. So this new movie that we made, the heart of it is this friendship between me and Sarah Silverman's character, and there's a lot there that people, anyone who's ever had a good friend, can really relate to. And I didn't want to let the audience off the hook with just making a flashy, shiny, happy kids movie that was just instantly forgettable. I wanted to do something that really, if kids were going to let us into that very personal place of their hearts, then let's make it worth their while. Let's really do something meaningful. When they let us into that special place, let's try to move them and do things that mean something to them, not just entertain them or distract them.
I love that. Thank you.
Exactly.
That's great.
I think all my work, thank you, all the stuff I have out right now is in some way has that humanist point of view, because I was just kind of drawn to that material anyway, but I also think in the world that we're in right now, with all the division and it's actually computer thinking. That's what we're in. We've been trained to think the way we've been acting by computers, because a computer doesn't understand a third way. A computer understands 1 or 0, black or white, red or blue, and we've been trained by you're either with me or against me. Right. This dichotomy, this way of thinking. We've been trained that way, and I think the way out of it is to go hold on a second, No matter what your political party, you're a human being. I see you. I see, like when we did the Sisters Brothers, I was working in Romania, and there's a big Roma population there, of course, Romania, also known as gypsies, you know,
Right.
and they're this hated majority, really.
Right.
I mean, they are the people that founded Romania, and so there's a lot of ethnic Russian people who are Romanian who look on them like these filthy people. Like, and I remember being in the car with my driver, who I got pretty close to. I liked this guy, and he's like, gypsies, I hate them. I hate the gypsies. And I was like, you wait a minute. You hate all the gypsies? Yes, I hate them, and I hate them. I was like, wait a second. Like, what if there was a gypsy baby right there? Would you hate the gypsy baby? Well, no, it's a baby. And I was like, okay, so that guy right there was a baby. And so how can you hate him now if you wouldn't hate him if he was a baby? You know what I mean? Donald Trump was a baby. Each one of us were infants, so
Right.
each one of us deserves dignity and respect and love. No matter what we say, what we do, and we have to stick to these principles of humanism. That is how we survive. That's how we survive. That's how the planet keeps going. But anyway, I could go on and on about that.
Well, I think we just came up with your revenue stream that you're looking for, motivational speaking, John.
Okay.
Charge a hefty fee.
I would not charge for that.
See, you're not going to make money doing that, though. And then Stan and Ollie is another one of your amazing movies that you have coming up here. You, of course, play Oliver Hardy. Tell me about transforming into this iconic personality.
Yeah, all these movies
Physically
coming out,
and
it's crazy. Like, I made them in this rush, like literally like 2 days off between them or something, like from Sisters Brothers, or no, it went Holmes and Watson, straight into Stan and Ollie, straight into the Sisters Brothers. It's funny, it's almost like when you just, I remember one time I almost sat on a snake here in Bronson Canyon. I went to go sit down, and at the last second I was going to sit on this branch, and I went to sit down at the last second. Huge rattlesnake, mouth open, reared back, like, wah! And the switch went off in my head, and I just, run. It was like this caveman switch, run. My dog's like flying through the air on the leash. And then I was like, wait, the snakes can't move this fast. It's probably a long way behind me. Calm down. And I looked, and I'd gone like a half a mile or something. And it was a similar thing with all these movies. I was just like, just go. And now I look back, and I can't believe, like, holy crap, I went a long way. Like, I did all these things. It's kind of a miracle. But yeah, Stan and Ollie. I play Oliver Hardy in that movie, and
have you guys seen the trailer and seen the clips of and his transformation? It is
it's coming out soon.
Incredible, absolutely incredible.
And so Laurel and Hardy were really, really important people to me. Oh, you asked me who are my heroes when I was a kid, and I want to say someone very important to me, which was Gene Wilder.
The best.
Because Gene Wilder showed me, when I was a kid, Gene Wilder showed me that, in an era where, the 70s was still super macho. Like, it was like men were supposed to be macho, period. That's it. Except Paul Lynde, he got a pass somehow. God
he was on
him.
Hollywood Squares. That was a little bit different. Yeah.
Well, he was in plenty of movies too.
That's true.
But Gene Wilder showed me, like, it's okay to be sensitive. A man can be sensitive. A man can have a poetic soul. And it doesn't mean he's gay or straight or whatever. It just means he's a poetic soul. Like, and so as a kid, like, I was like, that guy.
Well, it's so funny, too, that his debut was in Bonnie and Clyde, where it was just hyper-masculine, and that's what set him apart in that movie. We're just like, who is this genteel...
Yeah. Well, J. Michael Pollard was also really interesting, had a really interesting quality in that film, too. He stuck out to me in that movie, too. But, anyway, Gene Wilder was really, really important. I got to meet him before he passed away, and that was just like, I couldn't believe it. I went to his house and had a tea with him. All these people took pictures of us, like...
What did he tell you on that day that you remember? that stuck with you?
I just remember like those eyes. He looked older and his hair was not quite there anymore, but those eyes was the same eyes of Willy Wonka and Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah, he's very special.
He's like, I'm sorry, I have to go now. We have a tap dancing class. And him and his wife went off to tap dancing class. Just so beautiful. It was like, he was like 8 years old or something at that point. But
wow.
Anyway, back to Laurel and Hardy. These were also very, very inspiring people to me. To me, in a way, like they're the fountainhead of acting for me. You know, when you look at their movies and you compare them to their contemporaries, like Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd. You know, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, when you watch their movies now, you think like, wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. He's hanging from a clock tower. Holy cow. Or he's going around on skates and, wow, that's impressive. Laurel and Hardy, you laugh.
Right.
You laugh because it's real and because the acting that goes on. I mean, yes, there's all kinds of like big pratfall stuff and of course tons of gags. Their movies are essentially a string of gags. But in between the acting, when they talk to each other, that was like, nobody was doing that. Nobody was doing acting of that kind when those guys were doing that in the 1930s. Maybe like Veronica Lake in Sullivan's Travels or something. She also had this quality like, whoa, like very naturalistic acting. Yeah, I was obsessed with those guys from a very early age. I used to see them on TV, and then I started to watch them on videotape when video came out. And so this idea that I would play Oliver Hardy was just completely overwhelming, and I thought, well, who else can do this? You know, that was the first thing. I was trying to think of other people for this director, because I was just terrified at the prospect, like, no way, no way.
Did Steve Coogan approach you first?
No, the director, John Baird, did.
Okay.
Yeah, so he said, would you gain weight? And I was like, are you crazy? No way! I just lost 30 pounds. I'm not gaining 150 back. He's like, all right, well, we'll get a suit and we'll get a thing. And I was like, well, if you promise that you would really spend the money to do that part right. Then I'll think about it, because I think I do understand the inside of that guy. And the other beautiful thing about the film is that it's actually not a recreation of Laurel and Hardy. We don't try to do or redo their movies. We do a couple of their famous routines, and you get a sense of what they did for a living. But what the movie is really about is a partnership, a marriage between two performers who spent their entire lives hitched to each other and who deeply loved each other by the time they were old men. And I thought, I can do that. That I can do. I know what it's like to be in a creative partnership, and I know what it's like to love another actor. And so I thought, well, there's some artistic license in that, because it's a fool's errand to try to be as funny or be funny in the same way as Oliver Hardy. No one will ever touch that guy, in my opinion, or Stan Laurel for that matter. But I knew that I could portray the guy in human terms. So
what did you learn about him?
Did this whole transformational process, which up until this point, like I have about 10 or 15 minutes in the makeup chair, and then I'm going, I should probably get to the, like I get really, really impatient in the makeup chair. But every day I just had this mantra. It took 2 hours or something in the morning to just put the makeup on, and 45 minutes at the end of the day to get it off. And I just remember sitting there thinking, like, this mantra, like, it's Oliver, it's for Oliver, it's for Oliver.
Wow. And what did you learn about his life that you didn't know?
Well, they were very interesting guys, both of them. They were very different, and they were thrown together. They didn't know each other. Hal Roach lost Harold Lloyd because Harold Lloyd was like, what do I need you for? I'm going to start my own studio. And he, like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, took an ownership stake in his movies and started to create his own work. So Hal Roach was like, I lost Harold Lloyd. I need my next stars. Like, I don't know, here, take the fat guy and the skinny guy, put them together. Oliver from Georgia and Stan from Ulverston, England, and just threw them together, and they had to create an act. They authored these characters that they played themselves. You know, they worked with writers and gagmen, of course, but Stan was really the one, like, he was the workaholic. He was the one constantly writing, constantly editing, sort of shadow directing their movies. They worked in this kind of crazy, chaotic way behind the scenes in their heyday. And then when they were forced into a studio system in the 1940s, they did not do as well. But so Stan was very much a workaholic, like obsessed with, you know, crafting like jokes and that kind of thing. And Oliver just loved to eat and drink and play golf. He was a savant at golf.
Really?
Apparently. Yeah. So everyone from John Wayne to W.C. Fields to this one and that one, they all wanted Oliver to play on their team when they would play golf because they'd all bet. And Oliver was
That's
like,
amazing.
He could have been a professional golfer.
Wow.
Which is crazy. And he didn't grow up playing golf. He just like had this natural grace and he could do it. Anyway,
wow.
So when they were in their heyday, you know, Stan, they'd work all day and then Stan would go to the editing room and work on the edit and Oliver would just take off and go to restaurants or whatever. Like he wasn't engaged, like, and they didn't socialize. I mean, maybe like for official events or something like that, but for the most part in their heyday, they didn't hang out. Wow. And then they stopped getting work and they couldn't get studio work anymore, and they thought, well, we're broke, because they had no back end, right. They had no royalties of any kind. So all those movies that are on TV, they saw nothing from it.
Wow.
They had no box office receipts whatsoever. They're salaried employees from the beginning of their career to the end of their career. And Hal Roach deliberately spaced their contracts 6 months apart. So if one of them said, hey, we want a raise, he was like, fine, I'll just get another fat guy, or I'll get another skinny guy, you know. And that's how he kind of worked them like that. So when they were out of work and they were older, they decided, well, we got to do something. And so they started doing these theatrical tours. And that's the body of our movies. And their last theatrical tour, they did about 4 or 5 of them. The last one was in 1953. And they went through England and Ireland and Scotland, playing these little theaters. And at first, people didn't even believe it was them. They're like, they'd come to the box office. This is in the movie. They'd come to the box office and say, who's playing Laurel and Hardy? They're like, oh, no, it's them, ma'am. No. Who? But I know it's them, but who's playing them? No, it's them. They're here. Like, what? But they seem like such a
distant
artifact of the bygone era or something. But anyway, it caught on, and yeah, that was when they became really, really close. Those theatrical tours, when they had to spend every train ride and every hotel room, every backstage, and every show
just
together.
Like you and Joaquin.
Yeah, that's when they realized, wow, I love this person. More than I love the act. I love this person. It's a beautiful story.
That's definitely a story I've never heard about them. So it's beautiful. So thank you for telling it.
Yeah, and it's never been easier to watch the movie. So I urge you tonight, when you go home, go to YouTube. Most of their stuff is 20 minutes long. Most of their heyday, you know, from the 30s. It will make you laugh out loud, I promise you.
Which we all need more of right now, for sure.
Yeah.
I would love to know which part you've played that you feel is closest to who you are.
I don't know who I am. I'm just a vessel. I'm a vessel for other people. I'm a vessel for things to pass through me. You know, like I don't really know who I am. It's not a bad thing. I'm just from the time I can remember, I've been someone who's inhabiting other people's lives and other experiences. But I mean, if I had to say like what came from the deepest parts of me, that would be the things that I improvised, right? So Wreck-It Ralph is certainly a lot of my own kind of spirit is in that character, or Boogie Nights, or you know, like the stuff where I really had where I was given agency with my own artistic output, where I could say, or I could look at it afterwards and be like, I own a little bit of that because it came from in here. You know? Yeah.
I love that. And you mentioned Gene Hackman earlier, and I have heard you referred to as your generation's Gene Hackman. And how does it feel to hear that?
I wonder if we have a Gene Hackman anymore. It's a strange world that we live in now.
I think it's you.
Well, I don't know.
Although Gene didn't do as much comedy as
that's a very nice compliment. Yeah. But when I look at the landscape of actors, like I went to this People's Choice Awards last night, and I was like, who are all these people? Who are they?
Right.
And that's not a it's not like a criticism of them. It's a criticism of our world. Entertainment has become so disposable now that no one gets the chance to become a Gene Hackman.
Right.
It's just like this endless turnover, and the content that's coming out. The movies, Michael Barker, who's the head of Sony Classics, said to me, I used to worry when 12 movies would come out in the fall, because that was a lot of competition for one of my films. He's like, John, you know how many movies came out this fall? 37.
Wow.
It's the turnover is just, I don't know. I don't want to be too negative, but I do wonder, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the person who's supposed to be saying to younger people, quality matters, your work matters.
That's why they're here today.
Your integrity matters. What you do, where you make your money matters, because I think to the world is saying to kids right now, to younger actors right now, you do a watch ad, do a TV show, do a play, it doesn't matter. Just get out there. Just get out there and be famous. It does matter. It does matter what you do. It matters that, and people if I have any staying power, or if there is love for me out there, it must be we're having events like this. but if there is any love out there, it's because people notice that I'm not out there shilling cheeseburgers, and I try to do stuff that I believe in, that has meaning for me, because then it has a chance to have meaning for you. But if I'm looking down at the audience and thinking they'll take any crap, just whatever, just say the joke, that corrodes the world, and it corrodes the human spirit, I think. But.
Oh, John, you're so lovely. We're so happy you exist, really, truly.
I'm happy you exist too.
Oh, thank you. I'm very honored to be here. So we have some audience questions. The first is from Zach. Where is Zach? Oh. Zach's over there. He asks a few questions, but the one I like the most is, any tips on perseverance when times get tough? How do you, it's also especially hard to be someone like you who quality is first, therefore it's even harder to push through. So what advice would you give?
It's tough, because the truth is, I remember my first movie audition was for Child's Play, that Chucky movie, the first one. And I would have been so happy to get that.
That was a big movie. That was a big movie.
I mean, it's a terrible movie. But at the time, when I was 19 years old, or 20, whatever it was, I would have been so happy just to make some money or whatever. So I don't mean to criticize younger actors who are looking for opportunities. I have a great luxury now. I have this big, all this history behind me. I can pick and choose, and I've saved enough money that I can do that. But in terms of perseverance, there is a place for you in this world. The world often wants to tell you there isn't a place for you, but there is. But you have to make it. You have to insist on being part of the world. Look at the way I look. Or look at my background. I have no right to be a movie star. I just kept doing it. I kept trying, and when I had setbacks, I said, well, what the hell else am I going to do? Just keep trying. I do remember when I was in high school seeing this thing, the Brat Pack. Remember the Brat Pack?
How could we forget?
And I remember seeing all these actors, and they were so handsome, and they were in every movie, and I just think I'm never gonna be in a movie. I'm not in the Brat Pack, and it's a small pack. And I thought, wow, how does that even happen? And then 10 years later, it was a lot harder for those actors to get the work that they were getting.
100%.
I have sympathy for them, of course, but then it made me realize, remember when they were the only pack?
Right.
And now maybe there is room for you there,
You also created your own marketplace. You created your own product that the market didn't know it needed until it saw you.
But the market still doesn't know that it needs me, Honestly.
Yeah, but
I go to things like the People's Choice Awards last night, and they're like, what the hell is this guy?
Yeah, but you said that people say that they need a John C. Reilly type. You have become a type.
Right, but that's just by like sinking into the groundwater. You know, like I've done so much work now that I've made a place for myself at the table. I've said I deserve a place at the table. Like, and that's what you have to say from the beginning of your career to the end of your career. You can say like, well, you know, I might not be like every other bear, but I do deserve a spot, and we all do. All human beings are all. I go back to that humanist stuff. We all matter, for sure. Next question's from Timmy. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely, very well.
Keep trying. Great answer.
Timmy would like to know, at what point in your career were you finally able to say no to roles, or you felt the freedom to say no? I
said no pretty early on. After I did a couple movies with Sean Penn, and I did, my first movie was Casualties of War, my second one was We're No Angels, and those were both with Sean, and then Sean was about to do another movie called State of Grace, and I had to audition for all that stuff, by the way. Sean didn't give me any roles, you know. He was definitely believed in me, but I had to audition and prove to the directors that I was the right guy for the job. But I was up for another movie at the same time as that I was about to audition for State of Grace, and my agents were all saying, "Oh no, you got to do this. You got to, you know, this is a better. That State of Grace part is not such a great part. You have to." And I remember Sean was like, "Well, what do you think? You gonna come do this audition or what?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but my agent's saying that I should do it." And he goes, "What?" I said, "My agent said I should probably do this." He's like, "Who?" I said, "My agent." And he's like, "John, your agent is the last person you should be asking what you should be doing. What do you want to do? What moves you? What do you believe in?" And that was a very impactful thing for someone to say to a 22-year-old John Reilly. And I suddenly went, oh, wow, because you just buy into this thing, especially actors buy into this thing. I don't know, there's this framework of agents and photographers and managers, and we just have to please them, and then they give us our opportunities. And that's just not the way. That's not the way to a fruitful career, actually.
And your best interest is not their first priority.
Right. He's like, "John, they want to make money. That's all. Is that other movie offering you more money?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Duh." That's what, you know. Like, oh, okay.
Wow, you were lucky to hear that so early on.
Yeah, I was very lucky. So maybe spread the word.
Right. And Tova would like to know, are there any musicals that you're looking at doing, again, adaptation from stage to screen, or any other musical project?
Yeah, I would love to do another musical. I'm putting together something right now, not a play, but like some music of Harry Nilsson. I want to put a stage show of his music. Great. And my friend Matthew Warchus, who directed True West, wants to do Sweeney Todd eventually, but I don't. You know, we have to wait. We have to wait for the last production to be forgotten.
How long does that take? Like a decade?
Like every 3 years. Yeah. I would like to play Tevye one day. But
oh, you'd be great. I
gotta get a little older and a little more Jewish or something.
Are there any other types of characters you'd like to play? I mean, I feel like it's run the gamut. I can't imagine who you haven't played yet, but or a type of role.
I actually have always wanted to play a priest, a priest like I understood priests to be when I was a kid.
Well, I think
which are like people that
good people
ascribing to a higher power and trying to do good for the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of doing good for the world, you do so much good for the world. We're so happy you were here. Thank you for coming out today. Thank you. Appreciate it.